Red Bull just unlocked something that could end the title fight before the first race even begins. Days before the Australian Grand Prix, Max Verstappen is receiving a Major RB22 upgrade package powered by Ford, and the numbers are almost hard to believe. Over 2,000 laps completed in testing. 0 major mechanical failures. 4 tenths per lap faster than Ferrari in race simulations. 12 degrees cooler engine temperatures. Over 340 kilometers per hour without drag reduction system. And that was before the Melbourne upgrade package. New blown diffuser evolution. Completely revised front wing. Refined hybrid deployment mapping. Improved traction. Sharper rotation. Stronger race pace. This is not a small step forward. This is a performance surge. If the estimated half-second per lap gain is real, the Australian Grand Prix could be decided by turn 1. But here is the part nobody is talking about. One hidden detail inside the Ford power unit upgrade changes everything for Sunday, and it might explain why the paddock is already nervous. Subscribe now, because what we are about to break down could redefine the start of the season. Now let's slow this down. Because before we even talk about the Melbourne upgrades, you need to understand what Red Bull quietly built in Bahrain. They did not chase headlines. They did not empty the tank for one flashy lap. They focused on mileage. Over 2,000 laps completed across testing. That is not normal preparation. That is endurance proof. While other teams searched for peak performance, Red Bull searched for stability. Long runs. Heavy fuel. Controlled engine maps. And here is where it gets interesting. Leaked telemetry suggested Verstappen was going purple in the technical middle sector using a conservative power setting. Conservative. That means he was not using everything. There was performance left on the table. Possibly as much as 8 tenths in certain phases of the run. 8 tenths. In modern Formula 1, that is enormous. But the real signal was not outright speed. It was degradation. On a simulated full race distance, the RB22 showed almost flat tire drop-off. Lap after lap. Minimal fall away. That changes strategy completely. Because when your tires stay alive longer, you control the tempo. You decide when to push. You decide when to defend. And Melbourne rewards exactly that. Track position is king. Overtaking is difficult. If you can stretch a stint while others struggle, you dictate the race. Now add the Ford factor. The power unit reportedly ran 12 degrees cooler than expected. That is not just a statistic. Cooler temperatures mean more consistent hybrid deployment. No late lap clipping. No sudden drop in electrical boost at the end of the straight. In Bahrain, the RB22 reached extreme top speeds without drag reduction system. That is efficiency. And efficiency wins races on circuits like Albert Park, where acceleration zones matter more than raw downforce. But there is another layer most people missed. On day 1 of testing, Red Bull had a hydraulic issue. Several hours lost. For most teams, that triggers panic. For Red Bull, it was solved with a software adjustment. No structural redesign. No emergency rebuild. That tells you something critical. The base platform is strong. The architecture works. And when your foundation is solid before race 1, upgrades become enhancements, not repairs. That is why this first block matters so much. Because everything coming to Australia is being added to a stable, reliable, efficient core. Not a fragile one. And that changes the entire picture heading into the first Grand Prix of the season. So the real question is this. If this was Red Bull holding back in testing, what happens when they finally decide to show everything in Melbourne? Now we move to Melbourne. Because testing pace means nothing if you do not evolve. And Red Bull is not arriving at the first Grand Prix with the same car we saw in Bahrain. They are bringing Spec 1.1. An aggressive refinement package. Not experimental. Not theoretical. Race ready. Let us begin with the side pods. The blown diffuser concept has been sharpened. The undercut is deeper. The inlet is more aggressive. Airflow now channels more efficiently toward the rear floor and diffuser. And this is where it becomes clever. The hotter air coming from the Ford power unit is being used strategically. Instead of simply cooling components, that airflow helps energize the diffuser. More rear downforce. Without increasing drag. That could be worth around 2 tenths per lap in medium speed sections alone. And Melbourne's middle sector is dominated by exactly that type of corner. But Red Bull did not ignore the front of the car. Because Verstappen made something clear during testing. The balance improved. But slow corners felt slightly awkward. Especially tight hairpins. So the engineers responded. A completely revised front wing main plane. More camber. More load in low speed. Sharper turn in. That matters at Albert Park. Turn 1. Turn 3. Technical entries where front-end confidence defines the lap. If the RB22 rotates cleanly there, tire temperatures remain stable. Stable temperatures mean consistent performance over a stint. And that feeds directly into race control. Now here is where things connect even deeper. Red Bull has refined the diffuser and rear crash structure. A subtle extension allows better airflow expansion at the back of the car. More traction on exit. Earlier throttle application. Earlier throttle means stronger acceleration onto the straight. And stronger acceleration pairs perfectly with the Ford hybrid deployment upgrade. Stage 2 engine mapping. Reduced turbo lag. Cleaner power delivery off the line. More efficient energy usage down long straights. No clipping late in the lap. When you stack these gains together, the numbers become uncomfortable. 0.2 from side pods. Significant gains in slow corners from the new front wing. Additional traction from diffuser refinement. Improved hybrid response from Ford. The estimated total improvement approaches half a second per lap. Half a second. Before race 1. And remember, this is being added to a car that already showed dominant long-run pace in testing. That is why this next phase matters so much. Because if Verstappen qualifies near the front, and if the RB22 delivers stronger traction and cleaner deployment at the start, Turn 1 could decide the entire rhythm of Sunday. And once Red Bull controls the rhythm, they rarely let it go. So the tension heading into Australia is no longer about whether Red Bull improved. They clearly have. The tension is whether anyone else improved enough to stop what might already be building. But here is where the story becomes bigger than Melbourne. Because this is not just an upgrade. It is a signal. Red Bull is not scrambling to fix weaknesses. They are refining strengths. And that changes the psychology of the entire grid. Think about what this means for Verstappen. When a driver knows the rear is stable, he brakes later. When he trusts the front, he commits earlier. When throttle response is instant, he attacks exits without hesitation. Confidence translates into tenths. Tenths translate into control. And control, especially at a circuit like Albert Park, becomes dominance. Now consider the Ford element again. 12 degrees cooler engine temperatures during testing. That is not a small margin. That is thermal headroom. Headroom means engineers can push deployment harder in race conditions. Headroom means less stress on components over a full season. Headroom means strategic freedom. And strategic freedom in Formula One is priceless. Because when rivals are managing overheating or clipping late in a stint, Red Bull could still be deploying consistently. Lap after lap. No drop. No fade. Now connect that to tire management. In Bahrain, the RB22 showed almost no degradation over extended runs. If Melbourne confirms that pattern, Red Bull can stretch stints while others are forced to pit. That creates undercut pressure, overcut pressure, strategic traps. And once you are reacting to Red Bull's strategy instead of executing your own, the race is already slipping away. But there is another layer people are not discussing enough. Development momentum. If Spec 1.1 delivers the estimated half-second gain, that validates their wind tunnel data. It validates their simulation tools. It validates correlation between factory and track. When correlation is strong, development accelerates. You bring upgrades with confidence. You push boundaries earlier. You widen the gap. That is how dominant seasons begin. Not with chaos. With precision. Now imagine Sunday in Melbourne. Verstappen launches cleanly. The revised front wing gives him sharp rotation into Turn 1. The diffuser extension delivers traction on exit. The Ford mapping provides instant torque down the straight. He controls the pace, manages tires, maintains deployment without clipping. From there, the race becomes a management exercise. And Red Bull excels at management. But here is the uncomfortable possibility for rivals. What if this is not peak performance? What if Bahrain was controlled concealment? What if Melbourne is still not maximum engine mode? Because when a team shows reliability, pace, and upgrade efficiency before race 1, it suggests something deeper. They are not experimenting. They are executing. And execution at the start of a season creates momentum that is incredibly difficult to break. We are days away from the first Grand Prix. The lights will go out soon. And if the numbers translate from simulation to reality, Australia may not simply open the season. It may reveal the shape of the entire championship. So the real question is not whether Red Bull received a boost. They clearly did. The real question is this. Are we about to witness the beginning of another controlled, calculated, and relentless campaign from Verstappen and Ford? Now let's push this one level further. Because if Melbourne confirms everything we have just outlined, the implications go far beyond a single race weekend. This would mean Red Bull did not just build a fast car. They built a complete system. Chassis efficiency, aerodynamic refinement, thermal stability from Ford, hybrid deployment consistency, tire management control. When all of those elements align at the same time, you are not chasing performance anymore. You are dictating it. And that is where seasons quietly tilt. Think about the opening laps in Australia. Fuel loads heavy, tires fresh, everyone pushing. If Verstappen's RB22 delivers sharper front rotation through the slow entries, he gains positioning. If the rear remains planted thanks to the blown diffuser evolution, he commits earlier on throttle. If the Ford power unit responds instantly with reduced turbo lag, he maximizes acceleration. Each of those details alone is small. Together, they create separation. And once separation appears in modern Formula One, it grows. Because clean air protects tires. Protected tires allow longer stints. Longer stints create strategic flexibility. Strategic flexibility forces rivals into uncomfortable decisions. Undercut early and risk degradation. Stay out longer and risk losing track position. Either way, Red Bull controls the narrative. But here is the deeper psychological shift. If Ferrari or Mercedes see half a second gap in race trim during the first Grand Prix, development urgency skyrockets. Urgency leads to aggressive upgrades. Aggressive upgrades increase risk. Risk increases instability. Meanwhile, Red Bull would be refining, not repairing. That difference in mindset is enormous over a full season. And do not forget something critical. The cooling advantage from Ford is not track-specific. It is structural. If they are operating 12 degrees cooler under testing conditions, that advantage scales in hotter environments. Miami, Singapore, mid-season heat. Where others may struggle with clipping or thermal limits, Red Bull could still be deploying freely. That is not just a weekend edge. That is a calendar-wide weapon. Now imagine the headlines if Verstappen wins in Melbourne convincingly. Not with drama. Not with chaos. But with controlled pace. Comfortable tire management. Stable deployment. The message becomes clear. The RB22 is not just quick. It is composed. And composure is what wins championships. We are days away from the first lights out of the season. Spec 1.1 is ready. The Ford mapping refinement is ready. The aerodynamic balance correction is ready. The platform is stable. The question now is brutally simple. When the Australian Grand Prix settles into rhythm on Sunday afternoon, will anyone be close enough to challenge Verstappen? Or will we realize that the huge boost we are seeing now was not just an upgrade, but the beginning of something much bigger?